Hi, and welcome back. Before we dive into the vulnerabilities of IP cameras, let's take a moment to understand what sets them apart from their older cousins, CCTV cameras. The IP cameras, or Internet Protocol cameras, are digital video cameras that send and receive data via a computer network. You can view them as mini computers attached to a camera. CCTV, or closed-circuit television, is a surveillance system operating on a closed loop, requiring a local recording device, such as a DVR. Typically, CCTV connects to a monitor via a coaxial cable or a wireless communication channel. It can function without the internet, as it records footage directly to a nearby hard drive. You can upgrade the CCTV system by connecting it to a network video recorder, NVR. This setup allows the NVR to function as similarly to an IP camera as possible. Before we move on, let's examine quick the vulnerabilities of traditional CCTV systems. First, the lack of encryption means that others could potentially view the camera's footage. Second, since the system is analog, it can be easily fooled by tampering with the output signal, such as feeding it an older recording without the security guard noticing. Third, because the system is analog, the video signal weakens as the camera's distance from the DVR increases. Okay, let's get back to the IP cameras. Let's classify them to wired and wireless. Wired IP cameras connect to the network using Ethernet cables, ensuring a stable and high-quality video feed. There are two primary types of connections. Power over Ethernet. These cameras receive both power and network connectivity through a single RJ45 connector. And the good old classic cameras. These have separate connections for network and power. In terms of functionality, both cameras behave the same. Next are the wireless IP cameras that connect to the network via Wi-Fi, offering greater placement flexibility. However, this introduces additional downsides. Besides the typical vulnerabilities of wired IP cameras, which we'll cover shortly, wireless cameras face signal-related issues. They are prone to interference from stronger 2.4 GHz signals created by attackers with more powerful antennas than your router. Additionally, they can suffer from signal loss or network disconnection due to DOS attacks or signal jamming by Wi-Fi jammers. Knowing the basic differences between these types of cameras is crucial as we move forward in our exploration of home security. Our first stop on this journey into digital vulnerability takes us straight to the most common and frankly embarrassing way people leave their cameras open to attack: default login credentials. Now I get it, we've all been there. You're excited to set up your new gadget. The instructions are about as clear as a fortune cookie written in Latin. And the last thing you want to do is spend another minute trying to decipher what a WPS button actually does. So you slap on the default username and password, promise yourself you'll change it later, and boom, your camera is up and running. Problem is, later often turns into never, and that's where things get dicey. Hackers use automated tools that scan the internet for devices using those default logins. Shodan is such a tool. It's like leaving your front door unlocked and putting a giant neon sign on your lawn that says, "Free stuff inside, come and get it." First things first, ditch those default usernames and passwords. Next, give your device a security makeover. Turn on encryption, tweak those default settings, and close any ports you're not using. This, my friends, is called device hardening. Also, disable UPnP and set up two-factor authentication for extra peace of mind. Next up, make sure to position your camera in a secure spot where it's not easy to mess with. And to top it all off, keep your camera on its own isolated network to contain it in case of a network breach. The IP camera is the window into our personal lives. Make sure the curtains are down. Keeping them safe is absolutely crucial nowadays unless you're keen on starring in an uninvited reality TV show produced by hackers. Not only could these digital miscreants tune into your private moments, but they might also record them and demand a ransom for the footage. Imagine explaining to your friends why you're suddenly crowdfunding your own living room dance party video, so secure that camera and keep your privacy and your wallet intact. Alright, now that you've graduated from IP Camera Security 101, let's dive into some ways those sneaky hackers might try to crash your party. As I've mentioned before, change that default password. Some devices hilariously have "change me" as the default. What more can they do? Add flashing neon signs. It's shockingly easy for anyone to hop on Shodan, make a couple of clicks, and suddenly be watching unsecured IP camera footage like it's the latest must-see TV reality show. Use long, complex passwords. Think more War and Peace and less password 123. Next up, we have the delightful world of physical tampering. Imagine some teenagers decide to give your IP camera a new career path as a bird perch or a garden ornament. Not quite what you had in mind for your home security, right? So make sure your camera is mounted securely and out of reach, unless you want your CCTV to star in its own slapstick comedy routine. Also, securing your camera will deter hackers from tampering with it. It only takes a few seconds to dismantle, a few minutes to plant something malicious inside, and disconnecting it from the Ethernet is instant. But what happens if an attacker cuts off the power? Well, it should be no issue for you because you watched this video and learned that PoE cameras are connected to PoE switches, which can be plugged into a UPS. How long will the cameras keep recording? That depends on the UPS power output, but at least your security won't be taking an unplanned nap. PoE for the win. Next issue. If you snag a cheap IP camera from a dodgy website, you might find yourself wondering why you can't adjust the settings to your liking. Surprise! Some of these cameras can be remotely accessed, and not just by you. Avoid storing your videos on their mysterious cloud servers and opt for SD card storage instead. If you're using a DVR or NVR, you'll keep the footage on site. Some reputable camera brands offer safe and speedy cloud hosting, but do your homework before trusting someone else's cloud. Personally, I prefer to keep my videos on a network-attached storage, aka NAS device. Plugged into a UPS in my basement or attic, I know exactly where my footage is and who has access to it. This is my personal favorite. What if I told you that everything I've mentioned so far won't completely keep your camera safe? Hackers are cunning. If they target you, they'll gather information about your setup, including the brand of your IP camera. They'll visit the manufacturer's website and check for the latest firmware updates. Why, you ask? Because when a new firmware is released, the manufacturer often lists the fixes. This means all cameras with the older firmware are vulnerable to those very issues. Moreover, some highly skilled hackers can reverse engineer firmware to find new exploits. Embedding backdoors into the firmware is also possible. This method is as old as time and still works like a charm because we, the victims, rarely bother to update our software or firmware. True fact. In 2016, hackers created the Mirai botnet by compromising millions of poorly secured IoT devices running Linux, such as baby monitors and IP cameras. Mirai identified vulnerable devices by using a list of over 60 common factory default usernames and passwords, then logged into them and infected them. With this massive bot army, they launched epic DDoS attacks, taking down major websites faster than a power outage at a disco. And there you have it. A crash course in IP camera safety that even your granny could follow. To recap, change those default passwords, keep your camera physically secure, and never ever store your footage on mysterious cloud servers from dubious sources. Remember, hackers are like nosy neighbors with a knack for reverse engineering. They're always looking for the next vulnerability. So stay one step ahead. Update your firmware regularly, use strong, unique passwords, and secure your camera's network like it's a VIP party with a bouncer at the door. Thank you for tuning in. Stay secure and see you in the next one.